Welcome to Savoring Holiday Sweets, a pediatric dentist perspective with presenter Dr. Tammy Button and me, the moderator, Tashina Brown. Dr. Tammy Button has a unique practice of pediatric dentistry. Instead of waiting until infants get teeth and/or cavities, Dr. Button instead works with pregnant women and expectant parents, preparing them to raise cavity-free kids. She is the executive director, president, and founder of South Shore Skipping Stones, a local nonprofit organization that provides pregnancy and infant oral health education free of charge both in English and Spanish. Dr. Button earned her DDS from Indiana University School of Dentistry and her MSD in Pediatric Dentistry from Riley Hospital for Children, Indianapolis. A clinical pediatric dentist for more than 15 years, Dr. Button is known for cultivating community partnerships. She served as the first director of the community-based dental education at Indiana University School of Dentistry. Dr. Button regularly presents lectures on pregnancy and infant health topics at the local, state, and national levels, and collaborates with other oral health and healthcare professionals to develop training courses. Dr. Button currently serves as the secretary of the Northwest Indiana Dental Society, as a member of the Health Link Compliance and Performance Improvement Committee, and both on the Infant and Oral Health and Drinks Destroy Teeth subcommittees of the Indiana Dental Association. Dr. Button is also a member of the National Coalition of Dentists for Health Equity. So thank you, Dr. Button, for joining us today for our presentation on holiday sweets.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be giving this talk today. And I just want to alleviate any fears that this presentation is going to be about telling you that you've got to cut all sugar out, and if you have any sugar, it's all bad, and we all should be enjoying just broccoli for the holidays. I am a connoisseur of sweets. I will tell you that right up front. And it's just like anything, as far as just being aware of when we say sweets, there are better sweets for us than some, and just being aware of what we're eating. So I just want to put your fears aside that this is going to be a completely anti-enjoy your holidays, or if you happen to be enjoying a sweet while you're watching this, don't worry, you're just fine. So one of the things when we talk about being able to enjoy sweets is that we want to talk about things from the perspective of family tradition, from things that we as adults remember from childhood. What defined our childhood? What were the things that we had that, what do you think of when you think of the holiday season? Whatever holiday you might celebrate. What do you think of with the 4th of July? What do you think of with Hanukkah or Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, or whatever it might be that a holiday comes to mind? And if you just let yourself sit and think about that for a couple minutes, you'll probably come up with a couple things that really stick out to you. And this picture is actually my daughter. She'll be 3 in January, and my husband's mother, her grandmother. And she is making cookies with her grandmother here. And this is a recipe that was from her mother. So handing that down from a generation to a generation to a generation. And that is something that should be treasured and savored and always part of our holidays. And this coming Sunday in my family, my mom and dad are coming over for baking day so that we can make some of the things that I remember from my childhood from my grandmother, who has passed away. She had a nut roll recipe. She had some cookie recipes for the holidays that were part of her family's tradition. She was the first in her family, first generation born in America. And so a lot of her recipes date back generations and generations to where she was from in Eastern Europe. So these are things, again, that have to be part of our fabric of who we are as people and where we come from. And I'm so proud to be able to introduce this to my daughter too, another generation, and she loves to cook and she loves to be involved and active in this. And so that's really important. Where we can run into some trouble these days is, homemade versus what we get in the store. The food companies are all after our business and they want us to choose their products. And there's a lot of products out there, obviously. So we want to make sure that we're able to look at what a food company is offering and be able to say, is this something that I really want to feed my family? There's things that are in our food these days that we really don't want to. And so we're going to talk about some of that. So before we get into that, I just want to make sure, is everybody seeing my screen okay? Everything okay? Okay, good. All right, great. So 3 things that we're going to talk about today. First of all, why even talk about sugar? Why is it even a big deal? The second thing, we're going to talk about a concept called true taste. And the third one is, how do we help kids develop a healthy relationship with sweets? And so if you have kids or you're a grandparent, you have loved ones, or even for yourself, this is all applicable no matter what your status is or who you are and why it is that you're watching. So if we start with just the simple fact, why do we even talk about sugar? And it's talked about a lot. And the simple answer is it's everywhere these days. And it does pose health risks to us. And I will talk about that. The thing is that as we look at our food supply, for example, when you were growing up, or your parents were growing up, your grandparents were growing up, things looked a lot different. A lot of things were homemade. And the advent of all of these great processed foods on the market brought along, we have to do something with the packaging. We have to do something with shelf life. And then also just the competition. Everybody is trying to one up the next company and how something tastes. So these days, it is possible for you to have what you think as the most boring day of food, because you know that you want to have that big piece of carrot cake at the end of the day, for example. So you have some instant oatmeal for breakfast. And then for lunch, you have leftovers of frozen fish from the night before. And maybe you bought some jarred beets. Great lunch, nothing that seems like it would be shocking there. And maybe you brought for an afternoon snack, because it's going to be a long time before dinner, you brought a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Or you may have brought some leftover lunch meat that you had, or an extra sandwich. And then for dinner, you had some pasta with some tomato sauce. All of those things have added sugars in them, and they can have a lot of added sugars, which is so sad to think that, okay, you bought frozen fish. You would think that at least frozen fish would be off limits to add sugar to, right? Oh, absolutely not. And I'm not talking about the breaded kind. I'm talking about just fillets of fish. So these are foods that it's in everything. And it's kind of like, when you sit down to look at your monthly budget and you realize that all of these monthly charges, $2.99 for some streaming service, and then $6.99 here for this, and you don't realize how quickly all of those things add up. It's the same thing with the added sugars in our food. And some of the things that are really shocking, infant formula these days, some of the brands have added sugar. So this is starting from, birth for some kids, that they're getting added sugars. Crackers are a big one. Pizza sauce, pizza crust. We've got bread. Most fast food French fries are loaded with sugar. Not that you would expect that. The meat in some of the fast food burgers loaded with sugars. Hot dogs are loaded with sugar. Ketchup, oh, a lot of sugars in ketchups. Granola bars, fruit snacks, juices, cola, all kinds of places. Gatorade, Gatorade is supposed to be one of those things that you drink after you to replenish yourself, and Gatorade is full of sugar too. So the reason why I want to bring this to your attention is because, when we're talking about added sugar, since it's everywhere, recently there were new guidelines that came out, dietary guidelines from our government, that said that for kids under the age of 2, every single bite that they put in their mouth really matters when it comes to trying to get all the nutrition and nutrients and vitamins and everything in there, that they recommend no foods with added sugars before 24 months. And that was a big, big deal to come out and say that. Now, the food industry has not caught up with that yet. And the interesting thing is, if you really think about this, so these are guidelines that have come out from the United States government, but the food industry doesn't have to catch up with that, which is kind of interesting, that if it's important enough that kids under the age of 2 ought not have this, then it seems like the food industry should be made to catch up with that pretty quickly, so that their products that are aimed at kids under 2 have to change to evolve with those guidelines. Unfortunately, that's not the case. So again, it is all about our awareness of this, because just because it's in a grocery store or at a farmer's market doesn't mean that it is completely healthy for you. You have to have the ability to look at a nutrition label, and we're going to talk about that, to know for yourself if this is really something that you want in your house. We talked about the fact that, why even talk about sugar? Sugar is one of those things that, as a pediatric dentist, honestly, this is the one place that I'm going to mention tooth decay. What happens when you have a diet that's full of a lot of sugar? It can lead to tooth decay. And look at all of these other things that are around that: obesity, heart disease, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, fatty liver disease, and ADHD. So fatty liver disease is something, this is really heartbreaking. Fatty liver disease, and traditionally, has been a disease of older individuals that have had a history of heavy alcohol use. This disease is now being seen in children as young as 6 to 8 years old because of the amount of high fructose corn syrup that they're ingesting in their diet. So that's pretty profound, that this is now switching a target population to younger kids. And a lot of kids that have behavioral issues, once the sugar sources are taken out of their diet in a staged way, some of those behaviors actually diminish. So yes, I'm a pediatric dentist and I care about teeth, but I care about health too. I care about being able to still enjoy good food and do it from a healthy perspective. So that's why we talk about sugar. So what is added sugar? Added sugar just means any additional sugar added to a food, whether it's at the company where it was made or when you get it to your table. So if you buy a cereal for breakfast, for example, this is the classic example, the cornflakes or whatever it might be that doesn't have any sugar, and then you just glop on, lots of sugar, enough that it won't even dissolve in the milk anymore, because that's how much sugar you've added to it. And man, that does taste good. That's all considered added sugar. So the other day when I was getting ready for this presentation, I looked to see what the count was for literally the number of words in an ingredient label that could mean it has sugar in it. And it was close to 300. This number of terms grows every single day. I don't have time to learn those. I don't have time to peruse the ingredients on everything I put in my cart. But what I do have time for is to look at the nutrition label. And luckily, within the last couple years, the nutrition label has been updated to show added sugars. So the front of a package can look like it's promising you live forever, health, all of these things, that it's just the best thing ever. The one place that a company cannot lie is on the nutrition label. And luckily now they have to disclose how many added sugars are in a product. So if you see a product that says that there's, for example, on here, it says total sugars and then includes 23 grams of added sugars. When you look at a package of mango, let's say a package of frozen mango, it could say that there's 25 grams of sugar. That's natural sugar found in mango. If it says that there's additional sugars in there in something that it's just fruit, that means that they've actually put additional sugar on top of that mango or whatever it might be into the package. That's where then you might want to investigate what in the world is going on with this food and do a little bit of thinking about, okay, is this really something that I want to eat myself? Do I want my kids to eat this, my grandkids, my loved ones, considering the fact that the first 4 ingredients all have to do with sweeteners that are put in there to really want me to continue to eat this food. It has nothing to do with nutrition or really good taste. It's just cheap ways of adding flavor to food so that we will continue to buy it. So my advice to you with everything is just start looking at nutrition labels. And again, it's a quick way to scan something to be able to make sure. And I have been shocked so many times. We do buy a lot of frozen fruit in our house because it's a great way to keep a steady supply of ripe fruit. It's usually frozen when it's ripe so that we can all enjoy, fruit throughout the year and have it as a nice sweet treat. There are some frozen fruits that do have added sugar, and I was just blown away by that. I couldn't imagine tasting mango with extra sugar on top of it, but apparently, there is a need for that, because if there wasn't a need, then it wouldn't be out there, right? So just make sure that you look at those nutrition labels, and anything that doesn't have a nutrition label, if you're getting it at a farmer's market or a place that, they don't have to sell something with a nutrition label, just ask. You're putting this in, you're paying for this. You have every right to know what's in it. Same thing at a restaurant, or asking. Another one that's great to ask when you're ordering a salad dressing at a restaurant is, are they homemade? And if so, is there any sugar? Salad dressings are another one that are kind of a punch in the gut when you realize how much sugar is in a salad dressing. So one book that I would definitely recommend everybody read, and I don't get any royalties for this, I just happen to have the good luck and good fortune of hearing the author, Dr. Michael Gorin, speak. He is a professor of pediatrics and runs the childhood obesity lab at University of Southern Cal, the LA Children's Hospital. And he and his co-author, it's years and years of research that they've written this book from. But the great thing about this book is it breaks it down and talks about ways to look at how to cut out that added sugar without really even noticing it. And it also has really, really good plans for how to lower the sugar in your family if you are a family that currently enjoys a lot of things that do have sugar in it. So it's a good book with lots of recipes. And for any of you that are on Instagram, their social media feed is fantastic too. They have a lot of great recipes. I made their pumpkin pie for Thanksgiving, and it was actually no sugar added pumpkin pie, which probably sounds awful. I didn't even tell anybody at Thanksgiving that, I didn't announce, hey, this is a no sugar added pumpkin pie. Everybody thought it was great. Nobody even realized that there were, other dates were used to sweeten it instead of just granulated sugar. So it's worth checking out. And the recipes again are really good. So this is from the American Academy of Pediatrics. It can apply to anybody, honestly. So they recommend that for kiddos over the age of 2, that you aim for less than 25 grams or 6 teaspoons a day for your child. These recommendations don't really change though, even into adulthood. So as I was saying, I'm not sure that I really think that my 3-year-old needs the same amount of added sugars that I do, but that's what the guidelines are. So water is always the first choice. Honestly, water is nature's hydrator. When you're thirsty, try to drink water, and unflavored milk as well. Instead of soda, the sports drinks, like I say, Gatorade, vitamin water, check your vitamin water label. Those are through the roof. Sweet tea, McDonald's sweet tea, woo, it's good, but it's what you should be having in, I think it's a couple weeks of the added sugars. Coffee, some of this of the all those different creamers that are out there, so good, but your cup of coffee could blow it for you for the day. And then, like we talked about with the hidden sources of added sugars in other foods that you wouldn't even realize, though they can lead you to be over your daily limit very quickly. And whole fruit as a something to satisfy your sweet tooth. I talked about the frozen fruits again. And when you have frozen fruit on hand, for example, frozen cherries, they're incredible. Frozen mango, frozen grapes, anything you like, you can get. Walmart has a great selection of frozen fruits and frozen strawberries, anything. And it's great too. Fruit is a wonderful source of nutrition, the whole fruit. And so when you do want something sweet, it sounds, like a diet ploy or something. But when you try some fruit, it's amazing. And I'm not saying that you should replace all of your sweets for the holiday with fruit, but just on a random Tuesday afternoon, sure, absolutely. Limit the fruit juice. Fruit juice is one of those things that, a cup of apple juice, to get a cup of apple juice can take up to, 6 to 10 apples to make that cup. That's a lot of, you wouldn't eat 6 to 10 apples, or your child wouldn't. That's a lot of, it's natural sugar, but it still is those sugars that can hype up a child or hype you up too. The other thing about fruit juice is there have been lots of metabolic studies done that prove that without the whole fruit, the skin, all of the guts of it, all of the things that go along with the juice of the fruit, you really don't get much nutrition that's absorbed by your body. And most of it is excreted in your urine and not absorbed. So fruit juice is really not that healthy of an option when it comes to nutrition. It may say that it's got all these added vitamins and minerals. That's great, but they usually don't say, and all of it is absorbed. So, and it's just when a child is used to fruit juice instead of water, then it's a difficult sell to give them just water. And the Academy of Pediatrics recommends waiting on any fruit juice until after a child's a year old, and then it's less than half. It's about a half a cup. So we don't buy fruit juice in our house. We don't keep it in the house for our daughter, or for us, really. We might get it for a special occasion or something. But she does get fruit juice at school, and it's served a couple times a week. And I'm fine with that. She knows that she gets that at her school, but she doesn't get it at home. And, everything in moderation, but she doesn't get it on a daily basis either. And that's the important thing. So what does that 26 grams of sugar look like? If you have, this is an average. So average tablespoon of ketchup is 4 grams. A tablespoon of ketchup would get you through about 2 French fries if you really like your ketchup. So a 12-ounce can of Coke is 39 grams of added sugars. Some of these things are, I don't know about you, but they just make me so angry. Yogurt with fruit on the bottom, 13 grams of sugar. You're trying to eat something good, yogurt and fruit, and they put added sugars in it. I mean, how dare you? A small pouch of fruit snacks. Fruit snacks, sometimes fruit snacks, if you look at the ingredients, don't even have any real fruit in them. They're packed with sugar, 12 grams of sugar. One packet of instant oatmeal can have up to 12 grams. Again, thinking that you're doing something really healthy for breakfast because it's oatmeal and it's packed full of sugar. One slice of bread, 6 grams of sugar. A tablespoon of peanut butter, and I don't know about you, but I don't use just a tablespoon, 8 grams. There are peanut butters that taste really good that don't have any added sugars, but you just have to look at the label. Jelly, a tablespoon, 9 grams. I don't use a tablespoon. That would seem like a very dry sandwich. A cup of, let's just say, Lucky breakfast cereal, 12 grams of sugar. Again, a cup of cereal isn't that much. And a cup of chocolate milk, 15 grams. So I don't know about you, but when I see what could happen with well-meaning intentions, this is where it gets unnerving. That a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, you can, if you look at nutrition labels again, do that just fine. There are breads that don't have added sugars. You just have to look at the nutrition labels. Peanut butter, there are some really good brands without that added sugar. Everything on here you can find except for the Coke, Diet Coke, but that's a whole other thing. And chocolate milk, I have not found any without added sugars because obviously it's chocolate. So that would be a great holiday time treat in the form of hot cocoa or something like that, but not to offer on a regular basis with all of that sugar in there. So my goal today is, again, just to get you a little bit fired up so that you do start looking at those nutrition labels and thinking about how to outsmart those people that think that they're pulling one over on us by adding all of these things to our food when we're just trying to eat well, right? So, which brings me to our next point. When we talk about the concept of true taste is teaching a child what food actually tastes like. So teaching them what broccoli tastes like. Kids are born with they want to have sweet things. And babies, newborns are born wanting the taste of sweet because this was a protective mechanism. Breast milk is sweet. If they were to eat something that was sour or bitter, that would mean that it wasn't good. So they don't like that. So they want sweet things. The earlier that an infant is introduced to the sweet, it just hypes up their thought of what something actually tastes like. So for example, when you give broccoli and I'm using mango a lot, but I've seen that broccoli and mango together, some of the food pouches that are available. Do you think that that kid is ever going to taste broccoli on its own and think, oh yeah, this is really good, because it's just kind of hyped up that taste? So that's what happens with some of the food pouches like I've shown here. These are great products for every once in a while, but not to introduce the taste of foods. Again, you can see all of the different combinations here: pineapple, banana, and kale. No chance of ever picking up the natural taste of kale there at all. And one thing that I want to mention is, so my daughter loves beets, and we had found a brand of beets that it's just beets. There's no other ingredients in it. And the store was out of it one day, and I found this jar of beets that looked like it had just come from the farm, and it looked great. So I thought, okay, these will be fine. I was in a hurry. I didn't check the nutrition label. I fed them to my daughter, and she spit them out, and she said, Mommy, these do not taste good. And I looked at the label, nutrition label, and the first ingredient was high fructose corn syrup. The second ingredient was beets. So she at least had the opportunity to taste beets just by themselves. And she knew with that added sweetness. And if any of you have tasted beets, those are so sweet. I not even try them, but to think that they would add high fructose corn syrup to something that's so sweet anyway. she at least could recognize that it didn't taste right. And I'm not telling you that because I'm mom of the year. I bought something without checking the nutrition label and thought that it was okay based on the front of the package. That's what I'm telling you. So it's so important to look, and it's also important to think about how we are presenting food to anybody that we are teaching how to eat. And this is a great book. Bee Wilson is from England, and she writes a lot about how we learn to eat. And she says that a parent feeding a baby is training him or her how food should taste. And if you're a parent, grandparent, caregiver, whatever relationship you have with a child, everything you give them is really, you're the teacher of how things taste. So every time if your child likes to taste things and add things to them, that's great. That's all exploration. Just want to make sure that they're getting the opportunity to taste things in their natural form, so that every time we do feed them, for example, green beans, they don't have to be so souped up that you can't even recognize that it's green beans anymore. We want them to be able to have that palate to taste, just those foods as they are. So we talked about the importance of water for all of us. And at 6 months, we have the first opportunity to be able to introduce water to a baby. And that comes at meal times, just introducing water so that kids can start learning from an open cup. And we're not supposed to introduce any other liquids at that time, because water is an important thing for us to learn the taste for. And if any of you struggle now with water, the taste of water, it can be difficult to drink it if you've not acquired the taste for it. And I know that sometimes if I haven't had water in a while and I've chosen other things to drink, it takes me a while to get back to it. And so that's something that we want to make sure that we give every child a chance to develop that taste for water. And this is so important right here, going back to the juice guidelines. Juice is so sweet too, because it's all the concentrated sugars that if a child really loves apple juice, they may not appreciate the taste of an apple, because even though apples are so sweet, apple juice is that much sweeter. So we want to make sure that they get a chance to taste apples too, and not just apple juice. So these guidelines are very, very clear about, juice for 1 to 3 years old, 4 ounces a day. So half a cup, that's next to nothing, isn't it? And 7 to 18 years old, so a cup of juice. I mean, we can all say that probably we're all giving more juice than we realize. So it's a good idea to really pay attention to that. And of course, water and just plain milk. Any of the sweetened milks, they're sweetened with sugar. So strawberry milk, chocolate milk, it's basically just a sugar syrup with some strawberry flavoring and the chocolate flavoring. So again, those are great for a holiday tradition, but not every day or even every week, because we just don't want that to become part of what our kids think the true taste of something is. So this last part, and this goes to the holiday sweets then. How can you help develop a healthy relationship with sweets? And again, I'm not telling you to cut out any of those important traditions or to look at your holidays and say, okay, we can't have any of this because it's not healthy. But hopefully I've shown you that it's the day-to-day that really adds up, that those things that you weren't even thinking of that have sugar, that unfortunately these days do. And so with that awareness, we can go into the holidays feeling really good about, okay, so now it's time for us to focus on those traditions, whether it's the sugar cookies, whether it's the homemade frosting, whether it's your grandmother's, whatever it might be. And anytime you make something homemade, you have the control about what goes in there, not some random food company. So anytime that you have the ability to make it from scratch, that's great. And we can't always do that, obviously, and to show a child, have that be part of what they think of with sweets, is that, we take some time and we make this, and it's a whole thing. That's part of it, isn't it? That enjoyment together of making something and waiting for it to come out of the oven, and it smells so good, and you have to wait for it to cool, and all of that. I think if you think about that too for a little bit, you'll realize that that is something that it's important. It's a part of our fabric of really who we are. Other thing is having good resources for recipes and not things that take forever. I don't have time to cook all the time, but I do have time for things that are pretty easy. This is a resource. It's called Feeding Littles. And again, if you're on social media, their feed is amazing. Amazing. This is just an example of one of their posts for pancakes. Pancakes are one of those things that can be just through the roof again with added sugars. They've got all kinds of great recipes here. Pancakes that are just eggs, bananas, and rolled oats. And I've tried all of these and they're really good, really good. And they freeze well, and everything that they have is just very, very practical. And Feeding Littles is made up of two women who are dietitians, pediatric feeding specialists. So the things that they're recommended, they've got their credentials behind their name to be recommending these to you. So you can feel good about what they're saying. So that's one of the things that I definitely would recommend that you take a look at. And also, again, the Sugar Proof book, because their recipes and their social media feed will keep you up to date with some really good recipes. So let's talk a little bit about a strategic plan for daily living for a family, whatever you define as your family. If it's you, or if it's you're talking about having people, if you are part of a childcare team or you are the parent, it doesn't matter. But if this is focused around a child that spends time at more than one location, which that defines pretty much every child, come together with everybody on that team and decide what are the most important dietary considerations for everyone. And are those guidelines going to be adhered to? And if so, which ones? And if not, why? And certain beverages, food items, or ingredients to avoid. It is so important and very difficult these days that to get everybody on that same page. But when you're able to look at the resources that are out there that tell you why this is important, sometimes it's just a matter of, again, not being aware. And why would you think to look at a nutrition label when these things, for example, yogurt with fruit, would have added sugars? So just having everybody be aware of this so that when it does get to the holidays, you're not really that worried about what is going to happen over the course of a week, maybe. And so also, if the child is old enough, include them in the conversation after that childcare team has their plan in place. This is kind of like discussing financial matters with kids. You know, the more they're involved, the more that they are going to be able to make those good decisions for themselves as well. So then when it comes to the holiday time, it's a continuation of that, where everybody that's part of that childcare team talks about, okay, so what are we going to make any changes to the guidelines that we do follow? What about what traditions are important for us to be able to teach this child? Is it possible to try to have mostly homemade sweets instead of store-bought? And then what is the defined timeline for the holiday or special occasion? This is a big one for me. I mean, you know, you get that, okay, so like a week before and then 6 months after, you know, what is the holiday time for those so that these treats feel special? And then when are we going to transition back to what we've defined as our non-holiday time? And another big thing to consider, and this is for everybody too, around holiday meals or any celebrations that have a lot of, you know, have heavier foods with a lot of added sugars in them, go for a walk, break it up, do something, because toddlers, kids that aren't used to a lot of sugar or are having more than usual, they can act out because they just don't know what to do with that. You know, when you really think about it, sugar is a drug because it alters our behavior. And so if kids are getting a lot of that, we've got to make sure, and even adults too, we've got to make sure that we do something to balance that. And so going for a walk outside, if it's not horrible weather or something, just getting up and moving and minimizing screen time for kids, especially, so that they just don't feel like they've got all this pent up energy and don't know what to do with it. You might start to see some tantrums evolve because of that. And by all means, fully enjoy those holiday treats, because if it comes once a year and we have these traditions, my grandmother, she was an excellent cook and an excellent baker. And I knew I knew which cookies she would serve at each holiday. She had different things for each holiday. If I went to her house on a random Thursday, I wouldn't be offered the holiday cookies, or I wouldn't be offered certain things. But I knew at Christmas time, I would be offered these things and I would look forward to that. And there still is something to looking forward to something and fully enjoying it and tasting its sweetness and savoring it and teaching others about what that tradition is. And that's really what it's all about, having this awareness so that we can still enjoy all of these holiday treats. So thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about all of this, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yes, we have a question from a participant who has a lactose intolerance and gluten allergy and has found that alternative products tend to also be high in sugar. She's wondering if you have any recommendations on products that will be alternatives that will also enable her to be conscious of the sugar levels.
Absolutely. So the lactose in milk is a natural sweetener. So when you look at products that are then for people that have a milk allergy or lactose intolerant, they tend to add other sweeteners to it to make up for taking out the lactose. And that's some of the issues, like with infant formula. When they take out lactose, then they use other sweeteners to make up for that. There are, so one of the, I just do better when I don't eat dairy. So I'm not to the extent that you are with an allergy, but I just know that I do better. There are some really good products out there that are not super sweet, that do well as far as some almond milks. There is a brand called Nut Pods, Nutpods, and you can get it in some stores now. You can also get it on Amazon, and it's a almond milk, coconut milk combination, and it is for coffee. So it's your coffee creamer, and it's no sugars at all. It is incredible. And it comes in little cartons that you can actually take with you. Like if you were going to go for coffee with somebody, because you get there and they don't have anything that you can put in your coffee. And it's like, oh, great. And like you were alluding to, a lot of the almond milks are full of sugar. So that brand is fantastic. There's also, have you heard of the Whole30? Okay, yeah. So their resources, the Whole30 is a concept of what you eat that takes out, eliminating things to see how foods affect you. So taking out dairy, taking out sugar, taking out gluten, things like that. But their website is full of really good resources for good sources of dairy-free, sugar-free foods. But it can be challenging. It definitely can, because again, since like you said, with lactose, that's a sweetener, so they have to sometimes find other things to sweeten.
We have a question. Are there any alternatives to pancake syrup?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So some of the syrups, if you look at ingredients again, some of those are, they use the term syrup lightly because they're mostly high fructose corn syrup or something that is just an incredible amount of sugar. And high fructose corn syrup is actually one of those things that if you can avoid any product with high fructose corn syrup, you're going to be so much better off. When it comes to syrup, one of the best things to do is use something that isn't diluted. Like a lot of the syrups that you buy in the store are not as, it seems like obviously they want you to use a little bit more. If you can stick with 100% maple syrup, that goes so much farther. And now maple syrup, that's all sugars, but it's natural sugars, but it's still sugars. It comes from the maple tree, but then you at least know that you're not getting granulated sugar, processed sugars, or the high fructose corn syrup or anything like that. A good maple syrup is expensive, but it will last a long time. The other thing to do, like there's nothing like a big stack of pancakes that's just dripping with syrup. And I'm fully aware of that and for that every once in a while, believe me. If you try some of those pancake recipes too, when you cook with banana, for example, and you add that to pancakes, the pancakes themselves pick up sweetness, like a lot of sweetness. So you don't need as much syrup to make that sweetness. The other thing is then if you use the maple syrup, then it tends to be a little thicker. So if you mix it with, your butter and all the, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to have pancakes soon just talking about this in this much detail. But there's those kind of tricks to, kind of thin out that maple syrup. But any of the maple syrups, there's the 2 grades. And as long as it says that it's 100% maple syrup, then you can be sure that that's what you're getting. Any of the other brand, a lot of the other syrups are based off of a maple syrup, but then they have all of the industrial things that are added to them.
Great, thanks so much, Tammy, for that answer.
Yeah.
We have a follow-up to that. What do you think of monk fruit sugar?
That is one that it's a natural sweetener. It tends to be really sweet, and so for young kids learning how to navigate sweetness, I don't really like to use it a lot just because it hypes up the sweetness of something a lot. It's not, granulated sugar or high fructose corn syrup. So there are those benefits, definitely. But you just want to be careful about using a lot of that with younger kids, again, because they're trying to set their guidelines for themselves about what to expect with sweetness. So some people don't care for the taste of the monk fruit because they can taste that it seems like it has a little bit of an artificial taste to it. Other people like it. I know that we use some products in our house that are sweetened with that, and it works well, but we just don't give those to our 3-year-old, again, just because we don't want her to build those expectations about how sweet something is.
Great, thanks so much for that answer.
Mm-hmm.
We thank you so much, Tammy, for taking the time to be with us today and share this information. We really appreciate it. And I'd like to thank everyone else for joining us.
Thank you so much. This has been fun. I appreciate the opportunity.